interesting. I see a lot of people who are familiar with Arweave. Hopefully there's some that aren't. But yeah, let's get into it. Mud pie. Pecan pie. Key lime pie. Permanence pie. What do these pies have in common? They're all made of delicious ingredients sourced from different places, and they come together to make something delicious. But I didn't quit my job working in enterprise IT to become a baker. I quit it to build the new web that we call the PermaWeb. So let's talk about that. We tried to put this together to explain the different layers that exist around Arweave. And yeah, we've been calling it the Permanence pie. Because the permanent data storage ecosystem can be thought of as something with different layers, all built on top of Arweave. Arweave is the bottom layer, the permanent data storage layer, and it's the protocol and network to provide the foundation for all the things built on top of it. The services layer, kind of the piece in the middle, helps facilitate the data transfer of information going in and out of Arweave, and provides other valuable things for applications and users. And then that top layer is the PermaWeb itself. And that's the application layer that brings all the benefits of this whole ecosystem to users and developers. So now let's go into each level one by one. So the permanent data storage layer, that's what got me into this whole thing. That was really the 0 to 1 innovation that allows users to store data for very, very long periods of time. Arweave is this decentralized layer 1 data storage solution, and it does this through this unique proof of access mechanism and tokenomic endowment model. So what does that mean? When you upload data to Arweave, you pay a fee. A portion of that fee goes to the miners who are accepting those transactions and storing and cryptographically sealing that data. But a bigger portion of that fee goes into this protocolized endowment, and that is used to pay for the storage, pay for the cost of the storage of your data for 200 plus years. And that's all based around the properties of the declining storage over time. Something that the team, the core Ford research team has modeled out. There's lots of information online that you could go and read about that and how they came to those conclusions. But what does it mean for users? It means an easy way to just understand how much it costs to store data. This was one of the things that really drew me to Arweave. When I first got into space in 2018, of course there are other decentralized storage networks, but it's hard to understand how, not just to use them, but just how much it costs. I think that's one of the beautiful things about Arweave is that the network maintains this price and it changes based off of the difficulty and a few other factors. Just looking at the cost of storage, today, this morning, it's around $6 per gigabyte, and figure that's going to pay for the lifetime of that data for 200 plus years. If you were to divide that month over month, like for example, if you would pay Google or Amazon or Dropbox, those monthly fees, you'll quickly see that storing data for this long period of time comes out to actually being much cheaper than the monthly fees that you would pay for something like S3. And figure when you commit your storage to Arweave, you pay for that. It's not going to change, the price isn't going to go up or down. You've already paid those fees versus Amazon, for example, could change the price on you in the future. Now let's take it a step above Arweave. Let's talk about the access component, which are Arweave gateways. And those are really the interfaces between users and apps and that base layer of Arweave. What do gateways do? They cache data for really fast retrieval. They will provide an API to all of the nodes, the Arweave nodes that sit behind the gateway. So you can, for example, get wallet balance, look up transaction information, get the price of storage. They'll proxy those requests to nodes. Gateways will also index any transactions that come through it and any transactions that it finds on the network. This is really important because applications need to be able to find the data after they've uploaded it. And that's the really powerful thing about Arweave is it's not just data, but you can apply a rich set of tagging standards to that data to, again, allow it to be easily discoverable in the future. And that's something that, for example, our drive, another app that we're building, heavily depends on. Finally, we're looking at introducing other features into the gateway to, again, make for a better application and user experience. So, for example, one of those things is actually what we've been calling the ARIO name system. Still kind of working through some of the branding there. But what that is an easy way to map ARIO data to friendly names, just like a traditional domain name system or other kind of naming services that exist. So now this access component means an incentive. That was one of the key things that we're really trying to provide when it comes to gateways. We want to make sure that data isn't just being incentivized to store, but there's an incentive to get the data back out at a really good performance and good quality service. So we decided to marry the gateway component with SmartWeave. SmartWeave is the smart contract language built on top of RWeave. It's a little different than some other smart contract languages. For example, SmartWeave, you can write TypeScript, JavaScript, versus maybe Solidity for some other blockchains. And now the difference is, for SmartWeave, clients can evaluate the state of all the changes made to the code. So, for example, what that means is what we've done is taken SmartWeave and turned it into a tokenized asset called a SmartWeave token. And that's going to be used to incentivize the gateway operators for serving data out, for ensuring that they're not being malicious or doing other things that we might not want them to do. And also, we've injected other kind of business logic into the smart contract itself. So, for example, if you purchase a name, within the contract, it'll define the price of that name and some of the rules around how you can purchase it and what you could do with it. So these things combined really create this full access and incentive layer called ARIO. And that's really this global network of decentralized and incentivized gateways that really lets devs, apps, users easily get their data in and out. And we've designed it to be open source, modular, and very composable. And that was important for us because there's so many different teams building on RWeave. We didn't want to force people to just use one kind of gateway service. So we built it in such a way so you can deploy it on a really small single server, or you could deploy it in a very big scalable cloud, and you can build things on top of it. And again, it's really important for us to do that and lower the barriers of entry for anybody who wants to host one of these. Finally, gateways will not just be incentivized via our token, but any gateway operator can optionally choose to collect other fees for the services that they are providing. So here's just a quick view of how the data access works. Granted, gateways are doing other things too, but I figured it was important just to show the data reading. But it's pretty simple. Anyone who's looking for data, whether you're an individual user, apps, or even other infrastructure, they're going to connect to an ARIO node. They're going to connect to a gateway. That gateway is going to say, hey, do I have this data? Yes or no. If I don't, if that gateway doesn't, it will reach out to another gateway node who might have that data stored in its cache already for really fast access. However, if it's not there, the gateway is responsible for pulling that data back out of the RWeave network, whether it's nodes that the gateway operator themselves are running or nodes that have joined permissionlessly around the world. So it's really acting as that gateway between users and the broader RWeave network. It was also important for me to share a little bit more information about the naming system because, again, that was really important for us to make it easy for people to share RWeave data. And I think it was one afternoon I was sharing a link on LinkedIn, and it was rweave.net with a long transaction ID at the end. And we figured, hey, it would be a lot better if I had a nice friendly name for this. So we built this naming system that's also a part of ARIO. To purchase names, you need to spend the IO token. You could either lease a name for a period of time based in years, or you can permanently purchase that name where it is yours forever. The name purchase itself is represented by a tokenized asset, another SmartWeave token. And what that enables people to do is you have that name, you could actually transfer it, trade it, sell it to somebody else. So it opens up a whole secondary market around this name system. And finally, what does this really achieve? It achieves censorship resistance, and resiliency across top-level domains. Again, example, right now, rweave.net is one of the main gateways in the whole community. We've been seeing ISPs start to censor rweave.net and block users from connecting to it. Additional ARIO gateways will provide users and apps other ways to get their data out, and things like friendly names can also act as some spam prevention for users who might be uploading malicious data, phishing information, or things like that. They're not going to spend the additional IO tokens to get a friendly name. And what we're trying to build this all into, well, not just us, this is actually a community effort, what we've been calling the AR:// protocol, still have to work on that name. But that is a way that browsers can actually take Arweave names and transactions and automatically route them to a gateway without having to worry about the rest of the domain. So we're working with RConnect, for example, to provide this functionality, and ideally we get it in other browsers as well. So all of this comes together to make the PermaWeb. Those are the web pages, apps, data, files, infrastructure that all sits on top of Arweave. And for users and builders, this PermaWeb offers low cost, next to zero maintenance, and permanent hosting for any of their information. And we think that opens up a lot of innovative and tangible use cases. Before we talk about that, maybe let's just get into the difference between what we've been calling the temporary web and the permanent web. Actually, this is the similarities first. Both are built on top of standard network protocols like TCP, IP, HTTP, etc. Right? Both are easy to use and connect to from any device. You just need a browser. You just need an internet connection. Both are built, both can have applications built with common, well-known programming languages like JavaScript or front ends like React. So there's not a big learning curve to start building your first PermaWeb app. But I think the differences between the temporary web and the permanent web, that's what's really important. So what are the differences? Well, on the temporary web, data can be removed or modified. If you remove data, if you upload a YouTube video and then delete it, is it really removed? Someone might have copied it. You don't know. That temporal nature of it makes it hard to know if it's really been taken down. The data that gets uploaded to the temporal web sits in some kind of provider's data center. They have that moat around that data. They can use that data for whatever they want. It makes it difficult to exit that provider, and it also then allows those providers to deplatform their app, censor that data, or do other things that are against the incentives of the application builder. And finally, it's really difficult to just become an ISP. It's really difficult to just make your own cloud provider and compete with AWS, Azure, etc. The permanent web, though, any data uploaded to it, is immutable, stored forever, no questions asked. You don't have to guess if it can be removed or deleted or changed. It cannot be. Data is globally addressed and available in an immutable, decentralized data lake. So think about what that opens up. We were on a panel a couple days ago and we talked about this concept of remixing data or kind of reconstituting in different ways. And that's not something you can do on the temporary web. I upload all my files in Dropbox. Another app can't easily use that data. It's just not possible. Additionally, there are protocolized incentives built into the PermaWeb. These different centralized providers have their own incentives defined by their own boards, and it's just, again, could be in conflict with the incentives for the creators, the builders. And lastly, anybody can participate in the permanent web. Again, whether you are an individual person, a hobbyist, someone who wants to run a gateway or take part of the permanent web in their house, or someone who really wants to build a large business around it. It's for anyone, and you do not need permission to run it. And that's enabled all of these teams, right? We are just one of the teams building in this Arweave ecosystem. We're just one of the teams trying to make the PermaWeb real. And this really spans across software, infrastructure, dev tooling, social platforms, you name it, you could find it being built on Arweave now, which is really cool to see. But let's look at some examples. So what we see in Arweave is a lot of things are built on what I call data protocols and primitives, right? So these are kind of some of the building blocks that other app developers can use and compose their apps in different ways. Like, for example, the Arweave bundling standard, AR bundles, the Arweave file system, which is something we built for our drive that models your transactions like a file system. There's Cuneiform, right, which is Quill's database data protocol and ways to read and write from that. There's Arweave manifests, which is a bit of a technical thing, but it's also something that maps names to Arweave data and can allow static sites and applications to exist. There's SmartWeave and Warp, right? We just covered that, and again, that's another way, another standardized way to read and write data onto Arweave and then compute states and do really cool things on top of it, like creating atomic assets or the stamps protocol. There's various Arweave network standards where the community has come together to say, hey, we think that these kinds of tags will bring a lot of value, and if apps follow these tags, it makes the data more discoverable. Just this week, the Lens protocol announced their new, I think they were calling it a layer 3 built on top of Arweave. So these data protocols and primitives really allow for the apps to be built. But what kind of data can be uploaded to Arweave? Any kind of data, any kind of data. Movies, music, archived HTML pages, pictures, JSON, any kind of text format, private data. Arweave is public by default, but you can encrypt any of the information and store that on Arweave as well. Scientific documents, PDFs, it all works natively on Arweave. You can take this data, turn it into NFTs. We saw a huge uptake in that, I think, in the end of 2021, right? There was this big NFT wave. And really what that means is you can use your pictures, music, videos, et cetera, and inject that into any kind of tokenized asset. That could be on Arweave, it could be on Ethereum or Polygon, or insert your blockchain of choice. The data is securely stored on Arweave. The tokenized asset is maybe on another blockchain. You can't see, the URLs are coming in pretty small here, but one of the things to point out, all of these are being referenced on arweave.net. However, again, you can't see it here, but we're injecting some of the other gateway URLs that now exist on the network. So if you're an NFT creator, you could access that same data, whether it's from arweave.net, ARIO.dev, gateway.io, and some of the other gateways that have come on the network. It's all the same information sourced from the same global data lake. You can make personal pages, simple little apps for yourself, for your brand, for your blog. And these are things that could be built with other applications that have been deployed on Arweave to make it easy to create a markdown-like page, publish it for next to zero cost, and permanently represent yourself on the permaweb. Here we're also seeing some examples of RNS names being applied to data. So Nader's profile pic, right? We can get to that from gateway.io. You can go to ario.dev. You can go to any of the other gateways, same information. Here for Jonathan's page, we can actually see what we call an undername being used. So here's kind of like a subdomain. Figure you're purchasing a name. It's not just that one namespace that you're getting when you purchased it. You can create subdomains, or what we call undernames, underneath that, which gives you even more flexibility to tie more permanent data to friendly names. Taking that up a level, you can build full applications, full static sites on Arweave. Here's an example of the R Drive site. And again, you will be able to access that from any of the gateways. So I would love to demo this because I feel like it is very cool, but we couldn't today. But feel free to go check this out. And then furthermore, it's not just static sites that you can create. You can host full applications that are reading and writing data to Arweave. Again, this is just one example. There are many apps like this. Permafacts, Now, Stamps, IMG, loads of them. This is just our drive, right? And the cool thing about this is it's pretty low cost. Application data, at least the apps that we write, they're not big. So it's very, very cheap to permanently host this information, whereas if you're going to, again, a centralized cloud provider, you're probably paying $20, $30 more a month just for a small site. So just think about the cost benefits and the really low TCO for hosting your permanent app on Arweave. You can actually try one out today if you want. I think some people might have scanned some of the QR codes. But hunt, ario.dev, again, another PermaWeb app, a little game that we put together. So give that a shot and you can experience the PermaWeb yourself. And then when you're done with that, please follow us to learn more. You can follow our socials. At this point, we're looking for devs, builders, people who want to run gateways, really anyone who's interested in the PermaWeb, whether you're a junior or senior, we are here for you, and we want to help you make the most out of it. That's it for today. Thank you, everybody, for coming to PermaPalooza. Can we do a question? A couple questions? Okay, so the first question is around price of storage. This is definitely something that we've tracked pretty closely. The price that I mentioned today, $6 a gig. I think you figure there's two big factors you need to keep in mind: the price of AR to gigabytes, and then the price of AR to dollars, right, to fiat. I think at the peak, it was over $10 a gig, $12 a gig maybe. I think before the latest network hard fork, this 2.6, ARIO 2.6, which is a monumental upgrade for the network, I think it was $2, $3 per gigabyte. I know the change in price was expected by the team because some of the changes in how miners were pricing storage. So it was expected, and I think what we're seeing now is as miners are joining the network, as it's kind of rediscovering what the price of storage is, it's slowly coming down. I'm not sure what it's going to end up at. I think ideally lower the better. But the whole point of Arweave is to have this strong incentive to store and replicate data. And you're paying for it for a really long period of time. So it's always going to be a little bit more expensive because you're doing it up front. It's like buying a car versus leasing it. Your second question was around integrating with other apps and just making it easier to suck data into Arweave. When it comes to our drive, we certainly thought a lot about making integrations into OneDrive or Dropbox. It's not something we've invested in just yet. We're still working on the R Drive products itself and making sure the core platform is really solid. Those kinds of things make for great bounties. If anybody is interested in building something like that, we would love to speak with you. Alternatively, and this is what I do with my OneDrive, I have the free OneDrive. I get 5 gigs. I upload my latest couple months of pictures. It sorts them and puts them in some folders for me, and then I just drag and drop them into our drive. It's really easy. But obviously having a couple clicks to do that would be even better. Yeah, really good question. It's kind of handled in 2 ways. One is the gateway will optimistically cache anything that comes into it. So if you send a file, a transaction to the gateway, it'll put that right in the cache so you can immediately return it. Now that's just for layer 1 data, right? That's not for data that is bundled up with that AR bundle standard I was talking about. But what the gateway does is it can actually reach out to what we call foreign caches to pull that data. That cache could be on another gateway, could also be on a bundler. So, for example, there's this relationship between the Arweave.net gateway and the bundler network, where anything uploaded there is also instantly available via the gateway. And when the user accesses that file that comes from the foreign cache, the gateway then puts it in its cache for making for really fast retrieval for any other requests. That also applies to not just the data cache, but the index itself. So again, you send a transaction to the gateway, it'll optimistically index that in the GQL index. And likewise with Bundler, there's a connection there we call the optical bridge, where it optimistically puts stuff in the index. And we think these things are obviously really important. Nobody likes to wait for seeing their data. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that, going back to the similarities between traditional or temporary web and the perma web, that instant, that fast, those kinds of things, people expect that. So if we build a platform that doesn't do that, nobody's going to use it. Yeah, really, really good question. So great thing about Arweave, and I don't know what the exact size is, but I'm pretty sure it could, I think on paper, it's some extraordinarily large amount. And the way that works is, again, when you submit a transaction in that header, you're saying, here's the total size, here's the hash of the file, and here's the fee. Once the network accepts that, you can upload the rest of that data either the next day, the next year. You've kind of already paid for the block space. For example, in our drive, you can upload files, public files. Actually, I don't think there is a limit on it. We lifted it. I think we've tried up to 5 gigs. So bigger than that, we would love to see if you can do it. But the network is designed for, I think, unlimited size data, and whether that's layer 1 or layer 2 bundles. And we've actually already started to see some use cases of some creators uploading some of these models, attaching them to tokenized assets, and doing other things with them. So we're already starting to see people experiment with that kind of thing.